It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Tuesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. We're going to be talking tonight all about the imminent U.S. attack on Iran. And I will just say at the outset, I don't really believe there is going to be a military strike anytime soon. At least it's not immediate. And who knows? We'll see how it plays out over the next day or two. I'll tell you my reasons why. But tonight we're going to go into it. Obviously, there has been a lot happening in Iran, and we'll talk about all of it. There has been a massive wave of protests in the country over the past few weeks, starting in December, carrying over into the new year. Has a lot to do with the collapse of the currency and some of the banks over there. So there's been a major uprising. In response, the government has cracked down, allegedly indiscriminately shooting protesters, killing thousands. They shut down the internet in the country. And in the middle of all of this acrimony, the chaos, Israel and the United States are talking about bombing Iran. Bomb Iran. Lindsey Graham says he hasn't slept in a week because he's waiting for the United States to finally bomb Iran again for the second time in this administration. And so Trump has gathered together his cabinet earlier this evening. General Raising Canes was there, Joint Chief of Staff, among others. They're discussing options to respond to Iran. Initially, it seemed like that was imminent military action. Now it sounds a lot more like a non-kinetic option, meaning a non-military option. Maybe a cyber attack, maybe something else. Maybe it's economic. And it seems that as the tide has turned against the protesters, now Israel even, and the Gulf countries, and the United States are reluctant to go in. They say maybe there will be a better time later. So we'll talk all about that. We're going to cover everything in a comprehensive way, and it should be a pretty good show. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Check out our store at Fuentes.store. 10% off discount this week because I'm back for the new year. Check out our subscription website, AmericaFirst.plus, $100 a month. You get access to the group chat with me. $15 a month, you get access to the entire archive of content with MP3 listening as well for all the videos, shows, everything I've done. So check that out. I got to tell you, I'm not feeling so good. I was so excited. I came back ready to go. Big show last night. A lot of people watching. I have a fever again. And if you're joining me this week, I had the flu a week before Christmas, and it was the worst flu I've ever had. It was brutal, and it took me like a week to get over it. It was horrible. And now I'm sick again. Yesterday, I was saying to some people, I just can't shake this chill. I'm cold. I'm having these body aches. I thought it's because I did some push-ups. I take my temperature. I have a fever. So what the fuck? I'm sick again. But I don't care. I'm going to do a show the whole week. I'm just going to hang in and be a trooper and just get it done. This is the year of the lock-in, so we're not fucking around. We're not playing, okay? I don't care if I'm a little bit sick. I'm doing the show, but I feel like crap. Fever, headache. You know, you just don't feel right. You know what I'm talking about? You just feel like your skin is crawling a little bit. It's a nasty flu season. You got a lot of this stuff going around. So anyway, so I'm not feeling 100%, but that's okay. Other thing, before we get into the story tonight, did you see this? Trump goes to some kind of, I don't know what it was. I guess he went to like some car factory or something. And he's doing a press pool and a photo op and everything. I think he gave a speech there. He's at some auto thing. And he's on his way out to leave. And one of the people on the line on the floor yells up to him, "You're a pedo protector, pedo protector." And Trump, this is what it looks like, points to him and goes, "You," and then flips him off. Did you see this? You know, just when you think you're out, he pulls you back in. Just when you think you're done with this guy. And you know me, I'm very frustrated with this administration and all of it. But you can't lie. Like, some of the stuff he's been doing, it's kind of just awful. After he kidnaps Maduro, he calls into Fox News and he says, "Nobody has the capability we have, and we'll do it again. Nobody can stop us." And it's like, this is some, like, I'm kind of getting some energy here. I'm picking up on something here. And then he goes to this auto place and some blue collar hick lib, "Hey, you're a pedo protector." He goes, "F you. And then he gives him the middle finger. It's like, okay, that's based. We have to admit, we don't have to love it. We don't have to love everything that's going on. We don't have to put the MAGA hat back on, but it's like, okay, that's kind of awesome. And honestly, the pedo protector thing is really dumb. Here's the problem with Epstein. The problem with Epstein is that he is a Jewish spy. That's the problem. This whole pedo thing, it's like, is it really pedophilia? I don't want to be the one that has to say it, but I guess I'm being forced to say it. It's not really pedophilia, okay? They weren't trafficking 5-year-olds. It was like they were technically not legal. Big difference, in my opinion. I know that's a controversial take, but that's not really the issue there, okay? The issue is not that they were barely legal teens, which is what it is. It's horrendous. It's awful. It's pedophilia. Okay, relax. No, the issue is that Epstein is a Jewish spy, probably working with Israel. That's the dilemma there. He's working with Israeli intelligence. So I see these libs at the ICE protests in Minneapolis, and they're yelling, "Pedo protector." They're saying to ICE, you're with the pedo protector, pedo president, and this idiot in the factory, they're saying this. It's like, that's not even really the issue there, goof. Let's not, it's really striking to me, and I hate to say this, but it feels like so sticky that if you criticize Trump in any way, you can't get away from the left. You start to criticize okay, my problem with Trump is that he is not Hitler, all right? And that's the difference. You have all these left-wing people saying, "Why do I agree with Nick Fuentes?" It's like, I'm criticizing Trump because there's not enough deportations. There's not enough ICE brutality. There's not enough National Guard. Sort of a big difference. You have Pumpkinhead throwing herself in front of a ICE vehicle because she literally wants to lay down her life to protect Somali scammers. I am criticizing Trump because I want all Somalians out of America immediately. Like, there's kind of a big difference, but it's hard to criticize Trump and galvanize an audience and rally without finding yourself standing shoulder to shoulder with some left-wing idiot, with some pussy hat liberal, some leftist yelling, "Pedo protector, he's a pet." Really, bro? Like, you're a card-carrying Democrat, idiot. Are you kidding me? And it has nothing to do with that. It's that he's an Israeli spy. That's obviously the problem there. So I saw that and I'm like, what an idiot. These like disgusting chuds rising up. And it forces you, it feels like you're forced to make a decision. You're either with left-wing scum or you're with Trump. And it's like, I want to be with Trump, but he has these people that have captured his administration that are making it impossible to support. But I'm really not on the left either. So it puts you in in a pickle. It puts you in a tough situation. So, and I said as much the other day with regard to Venezuela, and we'll talk about ICE. I think we'll talk about the ICE protests either tomorrow or Thursday. We're going to save it for a later day. But it's the same thing. It's like all these people that are criticizing Trump and Israel, they're now saying ICE is like terror capitalism. I saw Blumenthal say that. Like they don't like that ICE is deporting people. It's like, okay, so what is this actually? I'm not with this. Like, I want the illegals out. And I said it the other night. This is the last thing I'll say about it. Then we'll move on. America first is the rallying cry. It is not like Israel's an apartheid state. It's not free Palestine. It's not. No, the rallying cry is a positive vision that says we're putting America first against all foreign influence. And you cannot be in favor of America first ejecting AIPAC and ejecting the Israel lobby and the neocons, but then turn around and say, we need millions of people here that have no legal standing to remain in our country, because these are both forms of foreign influence. 10 million illegal Venezuelans anchors away having children, that is a form of foreign influence. That is a form of putting America last. Just like it is when they bribe Congress. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You can't complain about $4 billion to Israel every year and then throw yourself in front of an ICE vehicle because they want to investigate these Somalians that are taking millions of dollars from the taxpayer. Because arguably it's the same thing. What do you think the Somalians are doing? They're taking that money for themselves and they're sending it back to Africa as a remittance. It's the same thing. Now, it is distinct in some meaningful ways. They have less agency. They work with the left-wing architecture. They work with the Democrats. But in principle, it is putting America last. So we have to differentiate ourselves. I said it the other night, but this is a year of refinement. We can't let the movement slip into this kind of, like I said, left-wing, women's march. You're not going to see me at the women's march ever. Like, I'm never going to wear the hat. I'm never going to be out there yelling, pedo protector, ICE is too brutal. My only issue with ICE is you cannot perform brutality without being brutal. My problem is the brutality is fake. No. We want them to actually shut down the country and actually get these people out, and we want them to downplay it. The problem is they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're playing it up because they want us to think they're doing their job. And by that, I mean they're putting out these edits of ICE kicking everybody's ass because they want the base to think they're getting mass deportations when in reality, the administration has no intention of doing it. And I'm saying we need the opposite. Keep it quiet, actually put a media blackout on it, suppress how much you're doing, and do a lot more of it. Shut down the whole neighborhood and just go door to door. Citizenship, papers, please. Citizenship, papers, please. Don't have them? Get in the back. It needs to be industrial. So anyway, and that's a far cry from these other people that are crying about a dead protester. You know, we're trying to get 30 million people out of our country. You think we're not going to step on some toes? Like, what do you think is going to happen here exactly? 30 million people are here and they don't want to go. Like, what do you think is going to happen? So the government needs to be willing and able to do what it needs to do. And now you have all these Israel critics coming around and saying, oh, well, I'm like anti-big government. Big government sucks. And I don't like police brutality. And the IDF trained ICE. It's like, okay, so you're just a left-wing idiot then. Okay, so you're just like some leftist scum. Like, you know, I don't even know at that point. It's like, what are we, the Ron Paul movement now? Like, I'm not a Ron Paul libertarian, okay? I'm not a Ron Paul guy. I'm not Obama. I'm not a liberal, okay? I'm a reactionary. We need decisive action from a powerful executive to radically change the country. We need like a reset. You know, the country needs to be put first, and that means a lot of stuff is going to have to change. And people that don't want to lose their jobs are going to have to lose their jobs. And people that don't want to leave the country are going to have to leave the country. And the left will lash out, and they need to be put in jail for it. And if they resist, well, it's what happened to George Floyd, anyway, so that's that. But I do want to move on because I saw that little video, pedo protector, and I'm like, this guy just sounds like some stupid hicklib. Gross. But I want to move on. I want to get into our featured story about these Iran strikes. As you know, I've been talking about this for years. And we're going to talk all about the current situation as it's unfolding. I do want to get into a little bit of the background here because just like with Venezuela, you can't really understand the issue if you're looking at it narrowly. You can only really understand what's going on if you look at it broadly. And that means you need to know what is happening in that neighborhood, and you need to know the recent history. You need to know what has been going on. Well, why do I say this? So what is happening in the past few weeks are these massive protests. Well, they want us to believe they're massive. This massive popular uprising in Iran. Iranian protesters have taken to the streets. They are taking over government buildings. And the Iranian regime, which is paranoid and violent, is cracking down hard, shooting the protesters with automatic weapons indiscriminately, stacking up the bodies, thousands dead, internet blackout to break the back of the protest. This is the story. And now there are urgent demands for the United States to intervene on the side of the protesters. But how did we get here? We have to take a step back. As you know, I have been predicting this for a long time. In 2023, after October 7th, I said eventually Israel's campaign in Gaza and Lebanon and elsewhere will culminate in a regime change in Iran that will involve the United States. And I said that for many years. I've said that, I guess now it's two and a half years or something, whatever, 2 years and a few months. I said from the very beginning that this was the long-term strategic goal or intermediate-term goal for Israel was they were going to take it in detail. They were going to take it piece by piece. And by that, I mean they were going to dismantle Iran's proxy network. They were going to dismantle Iran's nuclear hedge, which is its nuclear centrifuges and stockpile of highly enriched uranium. They're going to take out Iran's missile capability, their missile launch platforms, of which they have thousands of missiles. And that ultimately, once this has been achieved, the pathway will be cleared for a decapitation strike, a color revolution, an invasion, some form or another of regime change. And I said that, as you know, for those that have been watching the show years ago, it wasn't, I don't think, really the most unpredictable thing because the Israelis were saying it. The Israelis after October 7th were saying this. They said that after October 7th, we have to just change the status quo. We need to reset the balance of power. We need to reset the regional order that has persisted for 50 years, and they're alluding there to the Yom Kippur War and the land for peace negotiations since then, tolerating a Palestinian state, the rise of Iran and Islamism. In no uncertain terms, they were gesturing towards and telegraphing regime change. Now, why does this matter? It's because if you're only watching the headlines, if you're only watching the news, then these things are coming at you very fast, and they're happening all of a sudden. I remember I was talking to a Trump supporter in 2024, and I said, I'm not voting for Trump because he will take us to war in Iran. And I remember this guy said, dude, I just don't see that happening. And I said, well, of course you don't see it happening because you're not paying attention to what's happening in the region. You are not paying attention to the news at all. You are sitting around and waiting for the big story to break. You're waiting for the crisis to boil over, and that is when it appears in your For You page. That's when it appears on your timeline. And then it seems like it came out of nowhere all of a sudden, and maybe more importantly, it feels sporadic. When the United States and Israel attacked Iran last June, it felt like it came out of nowhere, and then as quickly as it arrived, it went away. And because it wasn't in the news, people stopped paying attention. And so because NPCs struggle with object permanence, for them, it just stopped existing. The region stopped existing. The crisis stopped existing. It was resolved in the war. And I remember, after the 12-day war, when Israel and the United States bombed Iran last June, everybody said, well, no harm, no foul. All Trump did was drop a couple of bombs on a couple of nuclear facilities. They said it's really not a big deal. They said because this isn't a war and it's not nation building and it's not regime change, they said this was actually brilliant because it was a targeted, limited, restrained strike only on Iran's strategic hedge, its nuclear centrifuge, its nuclear infrastructure. They said, so now that the conflict is over, we can all forget about it and we can say mission accomplished, like George W. Bush. It had like an 80% approval rating within the GOP, those strikes, and everybody moved on. So why does the context matter? Because we have been at war with Iran for many years. Arguably, our present conflagration with Iran started in 2018 when Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. And where does the Iran nuclear deal come from? Where does that come from? It comes from 2015 when Barack Obama and John Kerry negotiated the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. They got Russia, China, UK, France, Germany, Italy, all the major players together as signatories to agree to relieve Iran sanctions if they give up some elements of their nuclear program and have some oversight and transparency about it. We pull out of the Iranian nuclear deal unilaterally in 2018, hit the sanctions back on Iran hard. We forced the Europeans to put the sanctions back. 2020, we kill Qasem Soleimani, their top general. We declare their paramilitary group, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, a terrorist group. And then what starts in 2021, 2022, it's actually just an escalation, is that Israel starts assassinating Iran's nuclear scientists again. And Israel starts launching cyber attacks on critical Iranian infrastructure. And Israel starts conducting industrial espionage in Iran, blowing up factories, some military, some commercial, blowing up ports, attacking their utilities, their power grid, all of their critical infrastructure. And of course, that fed into what happened on October 7th and Israel's systematic confrontation with Iran's proxies, and then ultimately Iran throughout 2024, and then in 2025, with the 12-day war. And now here we are again in 2025 with these protests and all this talk about bombing Iran. And I'll reiterate it again for people that don't watch my show a lot, or if you haven't seen my coverage of Iran, the only thing you need to understand about Iran and Israel and the United States is the different strategic objectives that are at stake here. What is Israel's strategic endgame in the Middle East? They're very clear about this, and they have been ever since Likud, which is Netanyahu's right-wing party, ever since they came to power in the 70s, they have been absolutely transparent about what they want in the region. And how they describe it is they want a mosaic of statelets, mini states, mini governments, a mosaic of them. What does that mean exactly? It means that through war, through subversion, destabilization, through military intervention, regime change, they want to take all of the powerful Muslim countries or Arab countries in the Middle East, and they want to dismember them. They want to divide them up into many different territories. So take Iraq, for example. There was a time when Iraq was a major military power, and it was united under Saddam Hussein and his fascist Ba'athist ideology, and they wanted to unite the Middle East under this ideology. With his oil wealth, he built a military. had dreams of developing a nuclear arsenal or an arsenal of chemical and biological weapons. This is inherently threatening to Israel because Israel, in order to feel secure, needs it to be the case that there are no other countries that threaten it in the region. So Israel had the United States invade. Wasn't good enough that we oversaw the destruction of their WMDs. We had to overthrow Saddam in 2003. And what they ideally wanted for Iraq was to divide it up into 3 different countries. They wanted a Kurdish country, a Shiite country, and a Sunni country. Same story in Syria. They looked at the Assad regime, another Ba'athist regime with a pan-Arab ideology, secular government, and they wanted to divide Syria up into an Alawite country, a Sunni country, a Kurdish country, a Druze country. Because if you can take the whole Middle East and turn it into 100 different tiny states, tribes with flags, none of them will have the population or the economy or the military might to threaten Israel. And systematically, that is, as you know, what has happened to Iraq, to Syria, to Libya. Every country has been subdued in one way or another. And their last remaining foe is Iran. And Iran is a big one because this is a serious country, huge population, huge middle class. They have a lot of specialists and experts. They have a lot of universities. Like, this is a country with some serious potential. But it is being led by an Islamist regime. And what that means is that it is a theocracy. Islam is not just a religious or ceremonial law, it's also the civic law or the civil law. Islam is the law of the land. It is the rule by jurists, by theocratic jurists, chief among them the Ayatollah. And they have this ideology which theoretically could be expansionist. They could get Shiites in other countries to follow this ideology, like in Bahrain or in Iraq or in Syria or in Lebanon. And those create allies for Iran. It allows them to challenge Israel. And so for as long as this Islamic regime has been in place, which is since 1979, Israel has sought regime change. They want, as we talked about yesterday, what is a regime change? They want a different kind of regime. They do not like a revolutionary Islamist government in such a powerful, big, populous, oil-rich country. Because a country like that, one, as I said, is powerful enough to challenge Israel, but two, empowered by this ideology, by these ideals, could motivate other groups in the Middle East to work against Israel's interests, and that has historically been the case. So Iran is one of Israel's mortal enemies, but Iran knows this. Iran saw the fate of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi and Bashar al-Assad. And they know that they're next. They know that what Israel wants is a regime change so that they can pacify, subdue, or dismember Iran. Well, what is the one thing, what is the only thing in the world that is an absolute check that prevents a country from interfering in your affairs? It's a nuclear arsenal. There's a reason that we kidnap Maduro and not Kim Jong-un. There's a reason that we will bomb Iran with impunity, but we don't think of bombing Russia. We don't think of bombing China. When there is even talk of going to war with Russia, people freak out. Why? Because Russia has 5,500 nuclear warheads, because China has nuclear warheads, because North Korea has nuclear warheads. So we don't play with North Korea. Even though we could squash them, even though we could win a hypothetical war, we don't even play. Because at the end of the day, a nuclear bomb is an enormous complication. And we know that if we intervened in North Korea to try to decapitate the regime or overthrow the government, whatever it is, they have their finger on the trigger and they could nuke South Korea or Japan or Hawaii or California. So we think twice. Iran also understands that if you start to build a nuclear arsenal, this invites aggression too. It's sort of a paradox. The one thing that protects you from regime change is a nuke. But if you pursue a nuke, and there's really no way to conceal this, it invites regime change. If a country starts to pursue a nuclear bomb, it attracts the attention and then the aggression of the United States. So this is why they've created this hedge, a middle ground. They want to have the ability to make a bomb, if they so chose, without actually racing towards one. And so that way, they can have their cake and eat it too. If it was necessary, they could maybe build a bomb in a short amount of time and then protect themselves. And the United States would have to think about that. If they're going to win a war or if they make a move towards a war, they're going to have to move quickly. Without having the bomb, there is no legitimate pretext for a preemptive strike necessarily. And Iran knows that the United States might not do that. It's not actually strategically valuable. So Iran has its nuclear hedge. As I said before, Iran has its proxies all over the Middle East: Hezbollah, Hamas, the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. Iran also has these intermediate range ballistic missiles, thousands of them, which they used during the 12-day war last year. And so this is basically the matchup as it stands. Israel, after October 7th, made a decision that they were going to move towards finally and decisively confronting Iran. They made the decision after Hamas crossed the border that they could no longer tolerate the existence of Palestinians on their border. They could no longer tolerate the existence of Shiite Iranian-backed forces on their border. In Lebanon, with Hezbollah; in Yemen, with the Houthis; in Iraq, with the Popular Mobilization Force; and in Syria, with the Assad regime propped up by the Revolutionary Guard. So Israel makes this strategic decision. We cannot abide the status quo, but in order to change the circumstances, we are eventually going to have to go for the head of the snake. We're going to have to fight Iran directly because Iran is funding all these groups. But Iran is protected. They have this layered defense. If you make a move against Iran, they race towards a nuclear bomb. If you attack Iran, they have this missile arsenal that they will rain down on you. If you attack Iran, their proxies will attack you with cheaper, more primitive, but more numerous munitions, smaller rockets from Lebanon, from Yemen, from Iraq, from Gaza, from the West Bank. And so this is a layered defense. You can't just go in and make a move on Iran, because if you do, a few things are going to happen. Hezbollah hits the button, 1,000 rockets hit Israel. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard hits the button, 2,000 missiles hit Israel from Iran. And underground at Fordo and Natanz, they start to build a primitive nuclear device. And maybe that breakout timeline is 3 months. Maybe in 2 or 3 months, they have enough highly enriched uranium for a nuclear bomb or a dirty bomb, and they can declare to the whole world they've withdrawn from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, they've got a nuke, and now they're untouchable. Because all it's going to take is a couple of nukes to destroy Israel. It wouldn't take much. So what does Israel do? This has been the crisis for the past 2 years, going on 3 now. First, they systematically destroyed Iran's proxy network. They encircled Hamas with their blockade, airstrikes, ground invasion. They confronted Hezbollah with the pager attack, of which there were several waves, then thousands of airstrikes, then an invasion. And they compelled a surrender from Hezbollah about 13 months ago. Then they made their move in Syria. They collapsed the Assad regime. The new regime kicked out Iran, shut down the supply lines to Hezbollah, so Hezbollah can't rebuild. They bombed some critical infrastructure in Yemen, and there is some talk about disarming the Popular Mobilization Force in Iraq. So they took out the proxies. What did they do in the 12-day war last year, in June of 2025? They attacked Iran, invited the United States into the conflict, and they had the United States bomb Iran's fortified nuclear infrastructure at Fordo and Natanz, which were heavily fortified underground inside mountains. The United States dropped these bunker-busting 50,000-pound bombs with B-2 bombers, and we took that capability out. But during that 12-day war, Iran bombarded Israel with hundreds of missiles at a time. And this was ruinous for Israel. Israel actually demanded that the United States intercede and bring an end to the conflict because they were getting hit really hard. Israel's a small country with a small population, and they're vulnerable. So getting hit with hundreds of missiles every day, if Iran is being precise with them and wants them to hurt, it's going to hurt Israel very badly. They can't fight a sustained war with Iran. They can't shoot down all of the missiles in perpetuity. So Israel had to sue for peace. Now enter December 29th, 2025, just a few weeks ago. I wasn't here, so we didn't get to cover it, and it didn't make too many headlines, but Benjamin Netanyahu made his with Iran. And in December, widely reported in the Israeli press, he came with some requests. And he said a few things, actually, which can be summarized by this. What Netanyahu asked for in this for Hamas to disarm. No agreement on what the transition is going to look like. There is no agreement in principle. There is no agreement in the letter of the contract, what this is going to look like. And as it stands right now, Hamas is refusing to disarm. They're not giving up all their weapons. They said, we're not giving up our machine guns. We're not giving up our light arms. And so what does Israel want to do? They want to go on the offensive. And now Hamas doesn't have any hostages, so no leverage. No living or dead hostages. Israel controls about half of the strip. Hamas controls about half of the strip. Israel says, we're going to let the Palestinian refugees come into the yellow zone that we control, and then we're just going to kill everybody. And he's asking Trump for permission to do it. In Lebanon, Netanyahu has been lobbying the United States and the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah. They want the Lebanese military to take weapons from Hezbollah. And this is a very difficult political situation. Israel says that it's not happening fast enough. Israel wants to go back to war. Ceasefire was agreed upon in December 2024. Israel wants to restart operations in Lebanon. They want a major offensive in South Lebanon. And finally, most importantly, Israel wants the United States to bomb Iran's missiles. And this is the big one. Israel's claim is that after we went to war with Iran last June, that Iran has been buying all these cheap materials to build as many missiles as possible. They have fully replenished their stock of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, and they're getting ready to attack Israel. So, Israel says, we need the United States to greenlight an attack or participate and support an attack on Iran's ballistic missile platforms. Now, again, this goes back to, are you paying attention? Because if you're paying attention, you saw this coming the entire time. The goal, going back many years, is regime change in Iran. And understand there's an important distinction here. Israel wants regime change, but what they're selling us was denuclearization, right? In June, how they sold it is they said Iran is 2 months away from a bomb. They're going to get a nuclear bomb. They could use it against the United States. So Trump needs to take out their nuclear bomb program, right? They use the nuclear issue. But these are two different things. Denuclearization and regime change are two different things, but they go hand in hand because you cannot do regime change without denuclearization. And so why does that inform us about what is going to happen next? Because bombing Iran's nukes was only one of the steps in a much more ambitious program. It's not about their nukes. It's not about their proxies. It's not about their missiles. It's about all of those things, because all of those things protect the regime from outside intervention. But everybody, all the normies, all the NPCs, they say, well, we got to take out their nukes. Oh, well, now we got to take out their missiles. Their missiles, who cares about their missiles? Their missiles can't touch the United States. And here's the thing. You can make the case that it is in America's interest to pursue the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. It's not good for America for other countries to have nukes. We want as few countries to have nukes as possible. Ideally, we'd be the only ones that have them. But that is not their end game. And look at how quickly they did the bait and switch. Last June, it was take out the nukes, take out the nukes. Now it's take out the missiles, take out missiles. Who cares about the missiles? That's not our problem. You're afraid of the missiles? Well, you should talk to them about that. Israel should just talk to them. You want to know why? Because Iran is a huge country, huge territory, 90 million people, as we all know now, with oil wealth. They have a 1 million man army. Yeah, they're going to have missiles. Missiles are cheap. Missiles are cheap. That is the meta. That is the defensive realist tactic now. Yes, they're going to have missiles. So if you have a problem with the missiles, you talk to them about it. Get Saudi Arabia, get the Emirates, and you talk to them about the missiles. That's not a problem for Washington. Their missiles can't hit the United States from all the way over there. And why would Iran want to hit us with missiles? Leave them alone. This is about helping Israel, not for them to feel safe, but to clear the way to expand and escalate the war. Take out the nukes, now take out the missiles. So this is the meeting that happens in late December. Suffice to say, Netanyahu makes these requests of Trump. He says, I want to go back to war in Gaza. They're not abiding by the deal. They're not disarming. I want to go to war in Lebanon. I want a comprehensive escalation there because the Lebanese government is not disarming them. And we need to take out Iran's missiles. And if you recall, what did Trump say at the meeting? Trump said, if Iran rebuilds its nukes, we'll definitely bomb them. He says, if Iran rebuilds its missiles, we'll look strongly at bombing them. And so, according to sources that were briefed on this, they didn't agree to a timeline or any specificity, but Trump was not adamantly against this. Okay, so Trump is open to expanding the war. Sure enough, wow, what a coincidence. Sure enough, days after this meeting between Trump and Netanyahu, you get these giant protests. Giant protests grip Tehran and grip the west of the country. And now they're saying the regime is cracking down and murdering people. This is what the New York Times said about it. It said, quote, as the Iranian authorities impose a total communication blackout on a country convulsed by mass protests, the government is waging one of its deadliest crackdowns on unrest in more than a decade. Eyewitnesses say government forces have begun opening fire, apparently with automatic weapons and at times seemingly indiscriminately, on unarmed protesters. Hospital workers say protesters have been coming in with pellet injuries, now arriving with gunshot wounds and skull fractures. One doctor called it a mass casualty situation. In videos uploaded by opposition activists on social media, families can be seen sobbing as they huddle together over bloodied corpses and unzipped bags. Those who still support Iran's theocratic government and those in the streets calling for its downfall agree. These are days of brutality unlike anything they have ever seen. Multiple American officials say that U.S. intelligence agencies have conservatively estimated that more than 600 protesters have been killed so far. The agencies have noted that both the current protests and the crackdown are far more violent than those in 2022 or other recent uprisings against the government. A senior Iranian health ministry official speaking on the condition of anonymity said about 3,000 people have been killed across the country, but sought to shift the blame to terrorists fomenting unrest. Wow, well, what a coincidence, huh? So the week after Netanyahu is in Mar-a-Lago again, for the fifth time, visiting Trump, begging him to go to war with Iran, all of a sudden, and this is from the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, all these papers, it is just atrocity propaganda. It is just one thing after the next. Body bags stacking up, protesters shot with automatic weapons, indiscriminate murder. This is from CBS News. It says information trickling out of Iran suggests that a crackdown by authorities to end 2 weeks of widespread anti-government protests is far more deadly than activists outside the country have reported. With phone lines opening back up, two sources, including one inside Iran, told CBS that 12,000, maybe 20,000 have been killed. Okay, so which is it? So some are saying it's 500, okay? Some are saying 500. Some are saying 3,000. CBS News, which is run by Barry Weiss, says could be 12,000, could be 20,000. Why not just make it an even million? Why not just make it an even 7 million, a 10 million, 100 million? Like, seriously. So some 500, it's anywhere between 500 and 20,000. Really? You have no idea? No clue? So it could be 5, it could be 500,000. We really have no way of knowing. And so some are saying the official number says 500. Some sources say 3,000. Barry Weiss at CBS News, well, she's got a source in the country that no one else knows that says it could be 20,000. Okay. And it's in this context that now they're begging Trump to make a move here and intervene in Iran to support the pro-democracy protesters. Everybody's whipped up. And here's another thing about Iran. There have been massive protests. There have been uprisings in Iran for as long as the Islamic Republic has existed, and especially in the past 15 years. They had their Green Revolution. They had major protests in 2019, in 2022, in 2025. And again now, they have protests all the time. This is just what happens there. I will add, where the protests are occurring, this is all happening in the west of the country, in a lot of Kurdish majority areas. And so just like with Iraq, just like with Syria, once again, you have the Kurds, which are very much in bed with the Israelis, which have this cross-border connection with the Kurds in Iraq. They seem to be stirring up a lot of the violence. They seem to be stirring up a lot of the chaos. A lot of these cities that had the worst protests and disproportionately represented among those that have been arrested and died, it's all Kurds. In other words, it's all an ethnic minority. It's an ethnic minority that has their own ambitions or aspirations for statehood, peoplehood. In other words, they want their own country. And it's those people, it seems, that are taking up arms. Those people that seem to be responsible for a disproportionate amount of the violence. So is this a spontaneous demonstration? Is this a spontaneous uprising? People are mad about the economy? No doubt people are mad about the economy, no doubt. The currency collapsed. One of their major state-run banks collapsed. Iran is in real trouble. But how did we get here and why? It is because of 15 years of sanctions, industrial sabotage. We have been in a state of war with this country. We will literally not let them exist. Now you have all these protests, and it's in this context now that there is talk about airstrikes against Iran. This is where we are right now. So far, Trump has announced 25%. Effectively, they are secondary sanctions. He's calling them tariffs. Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all countries that continue to do business with Iran. This is a report on that. It says, on Monday, President Trump announced he would impose a 25% tariff on any country doing business with Iran, which, if enforced, could add to the economic pain among Iranians that sparked large-scale protests inside the country. On Truth Social, he said, quote, effective immediately, any country doing business with the Islamic Republic of Iran will pay a tariff of 25% on any and all business being done with the United States of America. The tariffs could affect China, Turkey, the Emirates, Iraq, India, and all major trading partners of Iran. Now, we'll see if that even holds up. It might be struck down in court, and it might not even be enforced. But he is tightening the noose around Iran. This is part of a maximum pressure campaign to create chaos inside the country. Then Trump discussed potential options to strike today at a number of press pools. He said that help is on the way for the protesters. This is from the New York Times. It says, quote, on 2 occasions on Tuesday, President Trump told Iranians protesting against their government that help is on the way. The latest sign that the U.S. might soon take action against a regime that mounting evidence shows has killed thousands of demonstrators during a popular revolt. The message indicated that Trump is on the verge of a fresh intervention in Iran, potentially wading the U.S. into a confrontation with the country to support an uprising against state repression and a flailing economy. Make Iran great again, he said after visiting a factory, calling the situation fragile. Trump, for days, has received briefings from top members of his team, including Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who have presented him with a suite of options ranging from diplomacy with Tehran to military strikes. Many of the options are non-kinetic, meaning non-military, officials say. If Trump does decide to authorize an attack, his options to do so are limited by the shift of military personnel and equipment to the Caribbean, which is kind of nice to hear. There are currently only 6 U.S. Navy warships in the Middle East, 3 littoral combat ships, 3 destroyers, versus 12 in the Caribbean. Twice as many ships here as there are there. There is no aircraft carrier strike group either, since Trump ordered the Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean in October. Well. Sometimes, I guess, groypers know what they're talking about, huh? Go figure. So listen to this. We might not strike Iran because all of our ships are in the Western Hemisphere and not in the Middle East. Huh. Wow, it's almost like a foreign policy of hemispheric defense is inherently America first. It's almost like a foreign policy that puts our U.S. military assets inside of our sphere of influence is an inherently America first position. Go figure. So we have all our ships in the Caribbean to pick up Maduro to take his oil, and we have none of them over there to bomb Iran for Israel. Huh. I guess that really worked out well for America first then. Go figure. Just goes to show, maybe that's a great policy. Maybe that's a great idea. The article goes on. It says, the Pentagon could still order Tomahawk missile strikes from destroyers in the Middle East, as well as send bombers and jet fighters stationed in the region equipped with long-range weapons. Protecting American troops stationed in the region also becomes more precarious without an aircraft carrier and its accompanying destroyers, which are equipped with the Aegis combat system that provides the ability to shoot down incoming missiles. So here's the thing, few things. You have these protests, and let us just say, first and foremost, this is all exaggerated. You are in a media distortion field right now. Just know that. When you watch the news, when you read the news, and they are talking about atrocities and violence and crackdown on the protesters and all this is propaganda. This is a media distortion field. They are distorting reality because the U.S. government and its other institutions like the U.S. media, they are in the business of democracy promotion. They are in the business of democratic globalism. They want a regime change in Iran. It is their wet dream that a secular, liberal Iranian revolution, a white revolution, overthrows the Islamic Republic and creates a Persian democracy or a Persian monarchy. So when you're seeing all this stuff, like what I just read from Barry Weiss, Israel-controlled CBS News, from the New York Times, from the Rupert Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal, from any of them, this is all being exaggerated. This is all being embellished. And then it is being amplified on social media. How are protesters trying to get internet inside of Iran? They're beaming up to Starlink. They're beaming up to Starlink internet. Why? Because SpaceX, which puts Starlink satellites in the air, is a U.S. military project. Elon Musk is one of the biggest defense contractors in America. Because Starlink and Starshield, that is one of the biggest and best tools that only the United States has in Ukraine, in Iran, in other countries. So are you surprised that SpaceX Starlink owner Elon Musk has on the X platform amplification of all this atrocity propaganda about Iran? There it is. So, when you look at all this stuff, you got to recognize nothing about it is organic. The uprising itself is backed, funded, equipped by the CIA, by the State Department. Okay, That is what the National Endowment for Democracy is for. That is what USAID used to do. And by the way, the State Department just absorbed a lot of USAID's functions. People think USAID doesn't exist anymore. That's not really true. It just got absorbed into the State Department. So the CIA, the NED, the NGOs, they're all operating in Iran. They're all supporting this. CIA is in Iran supporting this. Okay, they're fully backing the protests. The protests themselves are astroturfed. Their complaints are fake. Why is Iran undergoing a currency crisis? Because we have a maximum pressure economic strangulation strategy against them. We've embargoed their oil. We have sanctioned their economy. We have for years and put a stranglehold on it. So between fomenting the subversion in the country, making the material conditions worse through industrial sabotage and sanctions, then on top of that, embellishing all of it in the Western media, all of this is meant to create a pretext. This is meant to create a pretext to intervene. If nothing was going on in Iran, if everybody woke up and it was just a normal day in Iran, there would be no impetus for the United States to drop bombs on them. Time to launch a preemptive strike and destroy all their military capabilities. Why? We need an excuse to do it. So last year they said, well, Iran's on the verge of a nuke. Now they're saying, well, these protests are engulfing the country. But Iran is very good at putting down protests because they are brutal. No doubt about it, people are being killed. But I imagine these are protesters that are armed, most likely foreign-backed. These are not really nonviolent resistors. These are armed, organized protesters, maybe with a foreign connection. So Iran shut down the internet and they just started shooting these people, and now it's over. The regime has rallied, the protests are over, and so what is happening now? Well, it seems that all of this zeal to intervene has evaporated equally. Last week, they were saying intervention is imminent. We're going to drop bombs any moment now. There were a lot of conflicting reports coming out of the administration. Some reports said that the United States and Israel want to postpone an attack until March, when they can get ready. They can move the necessary assets into the region, prepare the logistics, do what they got to do. Others said that an attack is literally imminent. We have to strike while the iron is hot. We have to take advantage of the moment. The government's on the verge of collapse. And what would be the target of the strike? It would be the besieged. It would be the domestic security force. Now, what is the goal of the strike? If there are apparently these pro-democracy protests that are, being crushed so brutally, and these are huge protests, they really have a chance at overturning the government. Let me just say first and foremost, that is never going to overthrow the Islamic Republic, okay? The Islamic Republic of Iran has a 1 million man army. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard is massive. The Iranian Armed Forces is massive. And they're well armed, and they're organized, and they're experienced, and above all, they're loyal. They're true believers. They're loyal to the Ayatollah. They're loyal to the regime. And so the idea that thousands of protests are going to take to the streets and demand the end of the government, that does not actually overturn the government because Iran will just kill them. That's what happened in Syria. It took 14 years, or what is it? I guess it's 14 years for Bashar al-Assad to be overthrown. And Assad was a fraction as powerful as Iran. And that was with sustained armed resistance. That was with your Syrian Democratic Force. That was with your Peshmerga. That was with the Kurds. That was with this rally against ISIS, with ISIS Air Force, the United States. That's with the Russian Air Force. I guess the Russian Air Force was in favor of the regime, but you understand, this was a fight. This was a civil war between two armed groups, one with some ideas, with weapons, with foreign backing, the other being the regime. The idea that Iran is going to be pushed over because thousands of protests came out and fought with the cops, they will just send in the army with the guns and start shooting these people, and they'll just start dying and people start running away. And then that's it. So what was the Trump administration going to do? Well, at one point, it was alleged, as I said, they were going to bomb Iran's domestic security forces, the Basij, which is like a militia. These guys in particular are looking out for spies. Now, would you guess that on the last day of the 12-day war in June of last year, these were the types of targets that Israel was pounding hundreds of times before the ceasefire went into effect? When Israel attacked Iran last year, they targeted these government buildings. They targeted the military leadership. They targeted the domestic security force. And as that deadline approached that Trump imposed for the ceasefire, they hit the Basij really hard, hit the domestic security really hard. Why did they do that? Did they do that because they thought the government is going to be overthrown tomorrow? No. They did that because this is part of a systemic effort to degrade Iran's ability to defend itself. Again, nukes, missiles, domestic security, proxies. They want to make it so that they have this expression, they say they're trimming the grass, they're mowing the grass. They want to keep Iran weak and off balance. I don't think there's any idea that these protests are really going to lead to the end of the regime. But will they justify more U.S. intervention? Yes. Will they allow Israel and the United States to take out missile platforms? Will it allow them to degrade Iran's internal security, their domestic security? Yes. And what does that lead to? Well, maybe the regime doesn't fall tomorrow, but it forestalls diplomacy. The more that the United States has blood on our hands, the more that we intervene, the less willing they are to negotiate. And if Iran is not willing to negotiate, then war is inevitable. And that is what Israel wants. Two, if we hit their missile platforms, if we hit their internal security, it makes them more prone. The cancer can grow. The cancer can spread. More subversion, more infiltration, more destabilization. Without the missiles, they're less able to defend themselves. This is about creating a tempo. It's about creating a rhythm. Like I said, Israel has been doing industrial sabotage, cyber attacks. Then in 2024, they provoked Iran twice. They're blowing up Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders in Syria. And then they assassinated the leader of Hamas in Tehran on their inauguration day. Then they launched a preemptive strike. Now we want to do a democracy promotion strike and maybe hit some of their missiles too. It's about this orchestrated escalation, which will lead inevitably to a decisive confrontation. And what does that mean? It means a straight up war. Because how are you going to decapitate the Iranian regime? It's not like Venezuela where you kidnap one guy. You can't just shoot their missiles from the air. This is a hardened, fortified regime. They're underground. They build their missiles underground in underground cities. And they're not these little tunnels like Hamas digs. They're actually like cities. These are fortresses underground, and they're dug in. You want to kidnap the Ayatollah? We don't even know where he is. Maduro, They clocked him. They knew. The Ayatollah, they couldn't find him last year. So this is not Venezuela. This is not Assad. This is not Gaddafi. This is a serious country with a serious capability in military. And if you want to overthrow this government, it's going to involve armed resistance, probably from the Kurds, from Balochistan, from ISIS, from maybe some kind of liberal opposition, supplemented by U.S. air power. But even that won't be enough. I really, truly believe that in the end, it is going to demand some kind of U.S. ground force. And I know that sounds crazy and it sounds unlikely, but you will not achieve a regime change without actually putting the boots on the ground. You cannot defeat an army by just dropping some bombs. If you can't do it against Hezbollah, you're not going to do it against Iran. If you can't do it against Assad, you can't do it against Iran. And what I'm worried about, again, is that we are set in this tit for tat, reciprocal escalation for which there is no off-ramp. And Israel is holding our hand, walking us down the road towards an inevitable war. Now, what happened this week is that the protests got crushed, and now it seems that if the United States bombs Iran, a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, Iran is no longer completely vulnerable. And if we hit Iran now, it might actually rally the pro-regime forces. Bombing Iran's government might actually have the opposite of the intended effect. So that's one. Two, and this is really important. If we bomb Iran, Iran will retaliate against U.S. bases, maybe against Israel, depending on who hits them and where and when. Iran is going to strike back against Israel, certainly against U.S. bases. And if they launch hundreds of missiles, if it is a legitimate retaliation, you're going to need an aircraft carrier. You're going to need destroyers there to intercept and detect these missiles. If you want to put on a competent, successful defense of Israel or Al Udeid in Qatar or other U.S. bases in the region, you're going to want actually a real force package, which we do not have. There's no carrier strike group there. We don't have enough boats over there. You want to go to war with Iran or risk a war with Iran, you need some element of deterrence. And even in April 24, in July 24, when we were at risk of intervening against Iran, Biden brought out the big guns to deter a more forceful retaliation. Without those military assets in the region, theoretically, we're pretty vulnerable. Israel's pretty vulnerable. So do they attack Iran, risk an escalation without the necessary force package? You risk actually this reversal where you galvanize the pro-regime forces. And so now Israel and all the Gulf countries are lobbying Washington to hold back on a strike. And this is from the Times of Israel. It says, quote, Israeli and Arab officials have suggested the Trump administration hold off on striking Iran for now, believing the Islamic Republic may not be sufficiently weak in order for an American attack to topple it. The network says the Israeli and Arab officials prefer the U.S. wait to strike Iran until the Iranian regime is further stretched. According to NBC, Israeli officials told their American interlocutors that they strongly support regime change and U.S. efforts to bring it about, but are worried that foreign military action may not be enough. They also reportedly suggested the U.S. act in other ways to destabilize the regime and support the protesters who could do more to undermine the Islamic Republic until strikes could have a decisive role. Among the actions that NBC says Israel proposed are assisting Iranians get around the communications shutdown, toughening economic sanctions, engaging in a cyber attack, or launching targeted strikes against specific senior leaders in Iran that could spur the regime's demise. So now Israel and the Arabs don't even want us to intervene. Notably, however, the United Arab Emirates seems to be ambivalent. They seem to want us to do it. But every other country is telling us, hurt their economy more, ratchet up the pressure on sanctions, secondary sanctions, the 25% tariff against Iran's trading partners. They're saying conduct cyber attacks, assassinate key figures, make it ripe for regime change, and then go in March. And here's the timeline. Israel and Trump are very conscious of the fact that this is a midterm election year. You don't want to roll the dice right before the election. You don't want to give the Democrats a layup and say that Trump is bringing us to war in Iran. You don't want to take the chance. So both Israel and the United States know that whatever we're going to do, if we're going to do anything, it needs to happen probably before the summer. So I think the timeline for a U.S. strike on Iran is probably the spring, like March. I think they're going to ratchet up the economic pressure. There's going to be some kind of action will take place this week, I think. Something's going to happen. Well, I don't know if it'll be a missile strike, but it'll be something. And they will use those other means, those non-kinetic means, cyber, economic, psychological, whatever. They'll get it ready. And then in February or March, when we put a couple of carrier strike groups in the region, that's when you're going to get another provocation. Whether it's an uprising, Israel fears a preemptive attack, you're going to get all that propaganda. And rest assured, we're going back in. And we're going back in because the tension has not been resolved. Iran was building the nukes. We bombed the nukes. Okay, well, now they're rebuilding their missiles, so we got to bomb the missiles. Okay, well, they're going to rebuild them after that. Once you neuter the regime, what do? You topple it. And what's really interesting is watching J.D. Vance squirm. You know, the vice president is dying to become president. J.D. Vance, more than anything, and so does everybody else in the GOP matrix, they want Vance to be the president. And Vance knows this stuff is going to absolutely destroy his chances in 28. If we put boots on the ground in Iran, he is. And so what has been absolutely delicious to witness is J.D. Vance distancing himself from this all the time. You know, I saw this story in the Washington Post. J.D. Vance says that he's very concerned. He doesn't want boots on the ground. He's lobbying against intervention. And his people are slipping those stories. His people are planting those stories. And they did it last year too. They want everybody to know JD doesn't want a war. JD lobbied Trump not to go to war because he knows where this is headed. He knows the road we're going down. He knows it leads to a war. And he knows he is going to absolutely own it in 28. He is going to have to own it. And there's nowhere you can run. He's going to try to blame it on Rubio. Come 27, 28, he's going to say, well, that was Marco's profile. Or that was Marco's portfolio. Vance is going to say, I was handling all that other stuff like Charlie Kirk's funeral and mass deportations and cracking down on Antifa. That's Marco's portfolio. He managed the Venezuelan regime change and the war in Iran and, you know, all the other stuff. And you can bet 100% that is the play. Because I see this every day this week. It's a new thing. Vance says Vance is against it. Vance is, nevertheless, he persisted. He doesn't want a war with Iran. Yeah, because he knows it's his fat ass in 28 if we get one. So, you know, he should be more concerned with just stopping a war with Iran than convincing everybody that he tried to, you know. But we'll see. So that's my prediction on Iran. That's my outlook. I think that something is going to happen this week. I don't think it will be a missile strike, but I think we are going to increase the posture over there, and we're going to get something in the next couple months. They got to get it out of the way before the midterms. Israel's been asking for it, and they're going to get it. Israel gets what they ask for. And obviously, I oppose this. I am not in favor of regime change in Iran. Everybody calls me a neocon. Let me put this very simply for you. If it's an intervention in the hemisphere that our country is in, I'm probably in favor of it. If it's an intervention on the half of the world that our country is not in, I'm probably against it. People say that's a flip-flop. People say that's a contradiction. People say this is, you know, I say some good things, some bad things. It's really very simple. If the intervention is happening between the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean and the Americas, I probably think it's a good idea. Greenland, Panama, Cuba, Venezuela, sure. If it's an intervention on the side of the planet that we don't live in, that we're separated from by an ocean on either side that has nothing to do with us, probably against it. War in Iran, war in Ukraine, war in Congo, probably against it. But people are saying that's a flip-flop. One day he says he's in favor of Venezuela. The next he says he's against Iran. Yeah. It's called Monroe Doctrine, hemispheric defense, what we've always been in favor of. Iran is all the way over there. Doesn't really pose a threat to us. Venezuela, Cuba, they're right here. You could throw a rock and hit Cuba. And they're getting their oil from Venezuela like it's right here. That's America first. Anyway. So it goes without saying, I'm against this whole thing. I think that the country that needs to be restrained is Israel. Israel is pushing this, the subversion, the destabilization, the march towards war. This is what Israel wants. This is in their best interest. It really doesn't matter for us. And look, Iran is pursuing a rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, with Egypt, with all these other countries. We could work with Iran just like we worked with Saudi Arabia. People say it's an Islamist country that kills women and gays. It's like, dude, we are allies with Saudi Arabia for 100 years. You think it's impossible to be allied with a theocracy? Of course we could have a working relationship with Iran. Of course we could. It just has to be built up over time with mutual assurances, trust. The country that is undermining that relationship is Israel because they want us to do their bidding. They want to sabotage that, and they want to take that off of the table so that our only option is a decisive military confrontation, which happens to be the only way Israel is going to get rid of Iran. So I don't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb, but I also don't support regime change. I like the nuclear deal. Let him have a nuclear deal. You can build a balancing architecture between them and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia could get a nuclear program. Iran has a nuclear program. Just have some kind of trigger mechanism. If Iran reaches a certain point, then the Saudis and the Emiratis activate theirs. Like, wouldn't that be better than another ground war in the Middle East? It's crazy. But it is this country that has been trying to prevent that from happening. They need to be restrained. And if we could hold them back, then we could do what we want with Iran. So anyway, that's that. But I do want to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say. Were we having some technical difficulties or something? I could have swore I saw some drop frames. Yeah, the stream keeps freezing. What the fuck is up with Rumble, man? So ghetto. We were dealing with this in December. I go live every night, and the stream's freezing up. The stream's freezing. Drop frames is What is that? That's crazy. I didn't even know. People are saying, yes, I had no idea. I glanced over. I'm like, the viewership's not super high tonight. And then I see, I have my phone in my pocket. Usually I have it here. My guy's texting me, oh yeah, the stream's like freezing. Okay, so no contract and the doesn't work. That's crazy. No, that's crazy though. How about that, huh? Chris Pavlovsky, Nick Shirley, we would love to give you a deal to come on Rumble. Hey, what about me? We forgot about the other Nick. Did you forget about the other Nick that's actually pulling millions of viewers to your platform? Hello? Nick Shirley, and I like Nick Shirley. I talked to him. He seems like a good guy. But it's crazy. I'm on this generational run. Million views. I'm bringing millions of viewers to your platform. Nick Fuentes, who? I don't know who that is. Never heard of him. Nick Shirley, please, can we suck your dick? We will give you a contract. We would love to pay you to make... Oh, hey, what about me? I'm the one bringing millions of viewers here already for free. What is that? I am treated... You guys don't even realize I am treated like I am black. I am like a black man during Jim Crow. Not even a joke. And I know a lot of you guys think that because I got really popular this year or last year, that's all over now. It so isn't. It really isn't. Case in point, it's like I'm your #1 streamer by far. No phone call, no text, no contract, no pay. It's unheard of. It's insane. Could you imagine if you were like the #1 customer of any company and they didn't give you a note? You're like a Marriott Bonvoy member and they give you a bar of chocolate when you check into a hotel. I'm your #1 live streamer, maybe by far. #1, #2, whatever. Nothing. What? And it's because I'm Nick Fuentes and I'm like black. Separate but equal. And it's like even people that I know treat me like they don't know me sometimes. They act like they don't know me. And I'm not going to get too specific, but even close friends of mine act like they don't know me because I'm me. So I'm still a nigga, okay? I was a nigga last year. I'm still a nigga. 2026, still a nigga. Is it, new year, new me. Am I a man? Nope. Still a nigga. Nope. Am I a citizen? No, it's crazy. So anyway, that's just insane. the Nick Shirley thing, I was like, wow, that, like, you literally hate me. Nick Shirley, please. We'll pay you money to stream on our platform. Whoa, did you forget about the Nick that's on your platform? Hello? Insane. Actually insane. And then is broke. And then it doesn't even work. It's like, okay, first time having a live stream award. Crashing out a little.
Flipperboat 20.
Oh, whoops. I don't have my headphones in. All right, we're going to take a look at the super chats. I'm going to stop complaining. Stop my belly aching. Yeah, the things, somebody texted me last night. Give me a hard time. Oh, you got McDonald's Wi-Fi. It's not me, it's Rumble. I didn't even know it was happening last night. It's happening again tonight. We got to have a little talking to. Like, what do we got to do to make this damn ass website work?
Let's get into it. Let's get right into it. I'm going to try to go off on the notes as much as possible, just because there were a few different things that Nick touched on. And then, of course, the main issue being Iran. So he actually started off with talking about Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham hasn't slept because he's excited to bomb Iran. Lindsey Graham is one of the most evil people that it seems like we have in politics. He does not value human life. He values the people that align with him, and everyone else, it seems like, is just indispensable, doesn't matter. They can be used for him to accomplish whatever agenda it is that he wants to accomplish. So, Lindsey Graham puts on the Make Iran Great Again hat. And this is just a part of the whole propaganda play, in my opinion, of what they're trying to create with the protests, how they're reporting on the protests, them even creating the protests. Who am I talking about? Them? Well, it seems like it's the CIA, some agencies on our side. And then, of course, Israel. It's not blaming Israel for everything, but obviously Israel has been one of the main forces that have been trying to get us involved in some sort of war with Iran, because Israel benefits. Israel doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Does it matter to us? I don't know. But clearly it matters to Israel. So when we discuss a lot of these topics and hearing Nick respond, it's very easy for Nick to say that, oh, Iran, I don't agree with Iran, and give a bunch of reasons and say, oh, it's because it's on a different hemisphere. And I understand all that. But the reasons that he's given for it is saying that because it's on a different hemisphere, it's not separated by water, that they're not a threat to us, right? They're not as big of a threat. I would actually argue that Iran, perhaps, and this is kind of on the fly, I wasn't even going to go this direction. The direction that I was going to go was to ask, well, why do you condone us intervening in Venezuela? How much of a threat is Venezuela? We just pulled up on them and in an hour went and grabbed their president and his wife out of bed with, as reported, limited, whatever that means, limited casualties, right? Even though obviously every casualty weighs. Y'all get what I'm saying? So how much of a threat is Iran? I mean, how much of a threat is Venezuela? And I hope I said Venezuela the first time. Hopefully I didn't say Colombia, but I've been looking at a lot of Colombia videos with their president calling out a lot of this BS that we're doing when it comes to Venezuela, and then possibly getting involved in a lot of these other countries, whether it's Greenland, Cuba. But it seems like Nick's just picking and choosing and using whatever difference that he can to paint the picture as being the reason why he's not for the war against Iran, but for the war with Venezuela. But then as Nick's giving all of his reasonings to why he does not want to get involved with Iran, he's elevating Iran and their military and saying that they are a serious country. They're the ones that are making the nuclear weapons. I don't think Venezuela, let me, just for confirmation, I don't think Venezuela has any nuclear weapons. Does Venezuela have nuclear weapons? Let's see how far they are. No, Venezuela does not have nuclear weapons and has officially confirmed it does not possess or host them. They're not there yet. So if Iran has nuclear weapons, and some of the reasons that Nick is giving for not wanting to get involved in a war with Iran is because, hey, they're a serious deal. We're not just going to be able to go in there and do what we did with Iraq or maybe other countries in that region. in that region. Perhaps Iran is actually a bigger threat, even if they are on that side. Perhaps Iran is a much bigger threat. Now, Nick is picking and choosing, in my opinion, by saying, oh, well, this is the Monroe Doctrine, this interpretation and that interpretation, or this interpretation is the reason why, we have this because we can address the threats that are in our hemisphere. What is Venezuela a threat of? Nick just spent the previous show talking about how we overemphasize the amount of oil that China is getting from Venezuela. And so like a lot of people will say, well, it's a threat because they're providing China with so much. They're providing our allies or our adversaries with so much. But Nick already went over that and painted a clear picture that, well, actually, it's not that. Actually, it's very small compared to where China is getting a lot of their other oil from. So if Venezuela is not a threat, then why is Nick so on board with us going into Venezuela compared to Iran, which he's saying on one end that, oh, the waters between us make it not as much of a threat, so therefore we shouldn't have to address it, but him saying that they're a much greater army, serious country, which will make them a threat. So it just seems like a lot of picking and choosing. I'm not sure how people are determining their vantage point when looking at this, because a lot of this stuff is perspective, and it seems like we're painting our perspective or adjusting our perspective based on our politics. It seems like Nick just feels like it's a more base thing to agree with going to war against Venezuela. It seems like I don't even want to put myself in his head, but then when he talks about Iran, he's never been for that war. He's never been for us getting involved in their issues. But I don't understand why it makes sense to get involved in Venezuela's issues, unless you're just saying, hey, we see an opportunity to colonize, to extort them for their resources, so therefore we're just going to do it. And maybe that is what a lot of Nick has been saying on it. So we just have to understand from a principle standpoint exactly where everyone is, because when we're receiving information from a lot of people, we need to understand, like, okay, what's this person's principles? What's their morals? What do they stand on? That's why Nick always volunteers the fact that he's a Christian nationalist, right? He'll say on the previous show, he'll go off about Venezuela. He'll go off about Renee Good. Even on this show, I think he called her certain names. He'll do all this stuff, but then remind us that he's Christian, right? Remind us of his Catholic principles. But anybody with eyes and ears, in my opinion, can look at what Nick is saying regarding that as a contradiction. And it almost will be better, just remove the Christian principles out of it. Just remove the Christian principles out of it. Like, I don't know how we've become so accustomed in this world to just throwing around Christian, throwing around Jewish, throwing around Muslim, well, I think a lot of other cultures actually take their religion a bit more seriously than Americans when it comes to Christianity, but neither here nor there. We're so accustomed to throwing around our affiliation with a particular group, a particular religion, and accepting Jesus as our Lord and Savior. But in all actuality, it doesn't guide us in any of the decisions that we're making. When you hear Nick talk about Venezuela, does it sound like he's talking about he's being guided by Christ-like principles? No. So it has absolutely nothing to do with that. People just have a bunch of different things in their tool bag. And when they're looking at a situation, they analyze the situation, figure out, okay, where do I want to land on this situation? Rather than analyzing it to figure out where they should land and being led by their principles, right? So they'll look at the situation. Where do I want to land on this situation? Okay, that's where I want to land. Now let's back into it. Let me figure out all the things in my tools, all the things that I can use to present to the audience. How can I best justify why where I want to land is exactly where the audience should land? You get what I'm saying? So it's interesting to see how all this stuff plays out. Let me get back to the notes. Yeah, and total side note, yeah, Nick gets sick a lot. Nick gets sick a lot. Maybe he needs to get in better shape. Maybe maybe that's the inferior genes. I don't know. No, I'm messing around a little bit, but just a little pop shot. But nah, tighten up, bro. Tighten up, bro. Tighten up, bro. Yeah, maybe his immune system is just working extra hard, or maybe they're taking he's trying his hardest to go out of his way to validate all these things that, you know how you have to work extra hard to act, but when you're just being yourself, you're not exerting a lot of energy. But when you're acting, when you're constantly, it's almost like what they say about a lie. Like you always got to keep up with a lie. It seems like with a lot of this stuff, as Nick's talking about Venezuela, as he's talking about Iran, trying to validate one, but saying that the other one is wrong and trying to figure out different ways to say it. It seems like he's working extra hard to try to connect those dots that, in my opinion, are simply not there, or just hypocritical of things that he said in the past. But we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Nick kind of went off. He mentioned certain things about like Donald Trump. What do y'all think about that Donald Trump video? We're going to get right back to Iran, but I'm just trying to stick with the notes. He bounced over a little bit. We're going to get back to Iran. We're going to get back to the overall conversation, but I just want to make sure that I'm covering everything. So he said, he's talking about Donald Trump saying F you to somebody who called him a pedo protector, a pedophile protector. And Nick is getting excited about this like a child. And I'm analyzing. Y'all know I'm always over analyzing certain things, or just analyzing them in my opinion, but whatever. He's excited about the president of the United States of America saying F you to somebody when being accused of protecting a pedophile and protecting a pedophile ring, perhaps, which he is clearly doing after he ran on exposing it, him and his team. He's clearly doing it, but Nick is excited about him saying F you and giving a middle finger. Like a little kid is excited in school, like, oh my God, he cursed at the teacher, like something like that. It's just, perhaps this is why when I hear Nick, like on yesterday's show or the previous show, when he's dropping the N-word, when he's talking about these brown people, or when he'll say black, or all this type of stuff, bro, he's just doing it to appeal to, and I don't want to say this in a way to say that these people have low IQs, but I'm not saying that he's doing it to appeal to his followers that have the lowest IQs, but he's doing it to appeal to each one of our lowest IQ. You get what I'm saying? Like it's the most trivial, juvenile, childish, immature way that you can appeal to people. Like, oh my God, he said F you. Like it just, and I see a lot of with this rhetoric and how it becomes performative when you can't just express exactly what it is that you want to say. When you feel like you gotta, when you know that you're contradicting yourself inside. But let's just keep going. Let's keep going. I don't want to go off on too many tangents because I already elaborated on this on the previous show. So I don't want to just be repeating points. But yeah, the Trump stuff is just like, bro, like grow up, man. Grow up, because whatever. And then Nick made a couple comments that will probably go viral. And I've even seen a few people clip these on X where Nick's talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and even the framing of it on X, I'm not sure that it's entirely accurate. I don't want to act like I know exactly what Nick is saying, but when he says the problem with Epstein, or what he means when he's saying the problem with Epstein, he doesn't believe is pedophilia. You know, he doesn't believe that, Epstein wasn't doing this with babies or super young kids. It was just kids that were barely not legal, whatever words he described. When I look at it, I don't look at it as if it's really about the victims. And I don't think the majority of us look at it, if we think about it, like, oh, these people just really care about the victims. No, I think that this highlights the fact that people are willing to sweep this under the rug, the fact that so many powerful people were involved in this, and we're supposed to just look the other way. That symbolizes the amount of power that people have over a lot of these politicians, for them to not do something that is obviously, you would think, the right thing to do in exposing these things, and certain things that have been said, whether it's Don Jr., whether it's Donald Trump himself, or a lot of people in his cabinet, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, all these people ran on this. They were pushing for this. So the fact that they're not doing it, I think that is more of a problem. Now, I'm not talking about from a moral standpoint. I'm talking about, I don't think people care. I truly don't think people care. I think that people are more frightened or more upset at the fact that, well, what's preventing them from actually putting this type of information out? And I'm sure a lot of those victims of whatever happened with Epstein, they know that these people don't care about them because it would have been a bigger deal earlier on. The only reason why this is an issue is because people are now going out of their way to hide certain things that they said that they would expose. So, and we're wondering who's in it, what's Trump's involvement, all these other things. So let's keep going. But hopefully I didn't misspeak and that came across clearly, especially talking about such a sensitive, polarizing topic like that. I want to make sure that I'm clear, but I just don't think that people really care. Like, all of this stuff is just used as leverage. But I think us as a people, when we're looking at it, we should look at it obviously with empathy and sympathy for the victims. And we should also understand that there's a reason why these people are being blackmailed to not do what's obvious. There's a reason why Trump doesn't care about his approval rating, or let me rephrase it, why Trump cares more about hiding those files rather than, while he may lose points as far as his approval rating, he's okay with that because obviously there's some heavy hitters above him. There's a heavyweight hanging above him where they've told him, you're not releasing it, or you're releasing it the way that we want it released. And that's just what it is. So let's keep going. Nick made the comment that my problem with Trump isn't that he's Hitler. My problem is that he's not Hitler. Like, this is just the performative rhetoric. Like, we get, I'm not going to sit here and say I get what you're saying. What it sounds like you're trying to say is that Hitler was putting his country first. So your problem is not that Trump is Hitler because Trump's not putting his country first. He's putting Israel first. That your problem is that he's not Hitler. Nick is smart enough to know that he's using these different terms because he wants, I think it almost gets to a point where now you see what goes viral. You see what feeds the algorithm. So now you're going to go out of your way to do that. And then it becomes more performative because, in my opinion, the goal now turns into getting more views, getting more followers, addressing the algorithm rather than just presenting something in a principled way. But neither here nor there. So he went on to call Nick Pumpkinhead. To call Renee Good Pumpkinhead. I'm not even going to give it any more time because, like I said, that's just feeding the algorithm stuff. Nick says that he wants all Somalis out of America. Like, bro, who are you trying to appeal to? This is the thing. I really feel like Nick has been having an internal battle for a very long time, that he wants to perhaps be more Christian, be more Christ-like, but he also understands that his base is attracted to, this base of disaffected young white men that made up the majority of his base initially. I don't know if that's still the case right now. I think it's more broad, but let's just say his original base. I think he's just looking at it where he just wants to make sure that they're giving him as many different based comments and all these different positive comments, that he's just aligned with them and not losing his touch on that. And the easiest way, when he's figuring out how to navigate through a lot of these topics that may contradict his previous views or all these other things, it just is the easiest way to connect is to just bring back the rhetoric. So when you say something like you want Somalis all out of America, bro, you've said plenty of times that anybody can be on board, anybody can be on the team, and it's more so about adjusting and adopting and adapting to American values, living as an American, being a contributor to society, all these different things, not being violent, not being a positive contributor to society, I should say. Nick has said that anybody can be on the team, but then when it's like, hold up, I got to appeal to my base real quick, or I know that the messaging that I'm going to give in this particular show may be not aligned with what I've pushed in the past. So therefore, let me elevate the performative rhetoric a little bit more. That's what I see happening. So let's keep it moving. Don't need to spend too much time on that. Yeah, I wanted to touch on this whole JD Vance thing because that's super interesting to me. Super interesting to me because I guess I'd ask y'all, is JD Vance going to be the person that suffers the most from this? And maybe that's up for debate, and maybe it's not even the right way to word the question. But instead of is he going to be the one that suffers the most from it, is he going to be the one that is most challenged by it in the toughest position? Nick went over it either on his first show back. I don't know whether it was which day it was, but Nick went over it and said that he was talking about JD Vance, and he was talking about how now JD Vance is going to have to run. I think this was Nick. Maybe it was somebody else. Maybe it was Dave Smith, actually, in another podcast I was listening to. But one of them were talking about now JD Vance has to run. And while he's running, Donald Trump is still the president. So it's a very similar situation to Kamala Harris. But obviously, Joe Biden cognitively was not there. And also, I guess when Kamala Harris was asked that question by The View, would you do anything different than Joe Biden? And she responded and said, nothing off the top of my mind. If she got pressure in that situation to say, hey, I got to align with Biden, imagine the type of pressure that JD Vance is going to be under when he knows that he doesn't agree with a lot of the things that Donald Trump is okay with and doing Israel's bidding. That's not who JD is, and getting involved in a lot of these situations that have absolutely nothing to do with America. That's not who JD Vance is. That's not who JD Vance has been. That's not what he's promoted. And even when some of those, what was it, the Signal chat, I think when it came out, JD Vance was one of the only people in there, or the only person saying, like, why are we getting involved? Why are we getting involved? Wasn't that the first Iran strike, now that I'm thinking about it? Correct me if I'm wrong. So now JD is going to be in a position where a lot of people are unhappy. I would say that a lot more people are unhappy with Donald Trump than like his supporters that rocked out with him. Obviously, we're experiencing what a lot of people are calling this conservative civil war, where a lot of people are upset that people like Lindsey Graham, people like Randy Fine, or people like, you know, the neoconservative culture has taken over, and Trump is just doing their bidding, which ultimately is just the Zionist bidding. So I think more people are upset with Trump, who JD Vance needs to vote for him, compared to the people that were upset with Biden, who Kamala Harris needs to vote for her. So I think JD Vance is going to be in a very tough position. Imagine him on stage when they ask him a question like, hey, would you do anything different than what Trump did in these last 4 years when you were vice president? What's he going to say? If he says, I wouldn't do anything differently, of course he's going to get roasted, and he's going to be held accountable to all the things that Donald Trump did. And a lot of people aren't voting for that. Remember, Donald Trump, even though it was a landslide because he won the popular vote and he won the Electoral College and he won all the battleground states, it doesn't take a lot for a lot of these things to shift. And Donald Trump is Donald Trump. JD Vance is not Donald Trump. So people already are not going to be fans of JD Vance the way that they've been fans of Donald Trump. So now you add that into the equation, and it puts JD Vance in a very difficult position. In a very difficult position. I don't know what he's going to say. There may not be a right answer when it comes to JD Vance, no matter how he answers that, because if he goes the other direction and says, hey, I would do this differently, I would do this differently, and as Nick suggested, he may end up blaming a lot of this stuff on Rubio. Well, how is Donald Trump going to support that while he's president? That JD Vance is saying, pretty much calling Donald Trump out for doing certain things that JD Vance wouldn't have done. We're talking about Donald Trump here, not sleepy Joe Biden, right? It's a difference. Donald Trump's ego, I don't even know if it can handle JD Vance saying anything other than I support 100% what Donald Trump did as president, as his vice president. And now what it also opens the door for is maybe that's a better relationship that's going to be curated between Marco Rubio and Donald Trump. So now when Rubio, let's say maybe he wants to throw his hat in there to be the Republican candidate, Rubio's going to genuinely, more genuine than JD Vance, in my opinion, he's going to say, yeah, all this stuff that Donald Trump did, I was on board with. Venezuela, Greenland, whatever we do in Cuba, Nigeria, Iran, I'm with it all. Does it make Donald Trump look better now when Donald Trump is thinking about it to align himself with Rubio, to give his support to Rubio rather than giving his support to J.D. Vance? Rubio, in a lot of ways, has a lot more responsibilities and powers than J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was not on stage when Donald Trump's talking about Rubio and Pete Hegseth, who are now going to be running Venezuela. Now, that may have been J.D. Vance's decision to not be on stage, but as things get closer to the next election, as things get closer, there may be even more rifts within the Republican Party, and especially between Rubio and J.D. Vance, because J.D.'s in a tough position. Should J.D. just quit? No, he shouldn't just quit. Maybe J.D. Vance should put out a speech. Look, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if it's the best thing to do it right now, or maybe J.D. Vance should just stand on what he stands on and make it clear, like, listen, I don't agree with Donald Trump right now on a lot of these things. However, as the vice president, it's my job, it's my role to support in whatever way the president and the government needs me to. Now, a lot of people may look at that and say, like, nah, bro, do what Dan Bongino did. If your principles are more important than you being loyal to what Donald Trump tells you that you need to do. A lot of people may look at it like that. So it's going to be all over the place, but it's definitely going to be an interesting election cycle, starting with actually within both parties. We don't know who is. Just the Democrats just going to allow Gavin to run. Shoot, Kamala Harris putting her hat in the race. It seems like she's not done. A few others. Will it be Michelle Obama? Will it be Jasmine Crockett? Or will it be somebody that comes out of nowhere? Who knows? Who knows? It'll be interesting. And then what about RFK Jr.? We haven't even spoke about RFK Jr. He may be the one that is allowed to slide out of it or be in the best position, because he doesn't have to say, like, I align with JD or I align with Donald Trump on Iran, or I align with Donald Trump on Venezuela. That's not where we see RFK Jr.'s influence. I don't know exactly what it is, but it seems like he's more involved in the health aspects of things, which is what somebody like me, that's why RFK Jr. was my guy. And he was making a lot of strides when it came to being a third party. So now you got all three of them that may be vying for a spot. It's going to be interesting. It for sure is going to be interesting. I don't even know if RFK Jr. is going to still be able to be in his position, in his role, if he decides to run, because he probably, I don't know what would give him the best position to compete, but I could see him running as an independent again. So if he runs as an independent, can he run as an independent while still serving Donald Trump in his role, in his position? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. I'm just giving y'all some insight into my brain and how I'm processing all of this stuff. So let's keep going. So back to this hemispheric debate that Nick's talking about, where he referenced the Monroe Doctrine. Nick says that he's for interventions in this hemisphere, but not for other hemispheres. And excuse the noise in the back. They're doing a little cleaning up, so hopefully y'all don't hear it, but it is what it is. The show goes on. So once again, he says it's because we're separated from these other countries by water. I'm calling BS. And when I originally wrote these notes, I wasn't even thinking where it's like, hold on, this entire show, why Nick is saying that he doesn't want to get into a situation with Iran he introduced the fact like, oh, because the waters, but it seemed like that was more justification to get involved in Venezuela rather than to not get involved in Iran, because I'm pretty sure Iran has some capabilities that far exceed Venezuela's capabilities to offer a real threat to us in America and to threaten maybe our military bases throughout and where we may have our soldiers. I think that Iran is a much bigger threat, and Perhaps a guy like Lindsey Graham would agree. I don't know. I don't know if me agreeing with Lindsey Graham, well, I don't agree with Lindsey Graham, but as far as the threat, a potential threat. And when I say threat, I mean, I'm talking more so as far as capability. I don't think Iran is interested, like Bibi Netanyahu leads us to believe that, hey, they chant death to America. They see us as big Satan, and or they see America as big Satan and Israel's a little Satan. I don't think that that's the energy that Iran is giving off. I've never gotten that energy from their political leaders. I think we just watched an interview. I forget who was doing the interview. Was it Tucker? I forget. With Iran's president. And even when Patrick Bet-David, remember when I put up that video of Patrick Bet-David when Patrick Bet-David read the article wrong. He was quoting from an article saying what the president of Iran was saying when he was saying that the war, like we're at war, and all the news outlets were trying to make it seem like Iran's president was declaring war, when all he was saying is we're at war based on these people keep attacking us, whether it's with sanctions, whether all these things, America and the European powers. Remember when that came out? I recommend that everybody look at that article because a lot of people were presenting it as something completely different. And Patrick Bet-David just got it completely wrong in him reading it. He read us, and Patrick Bet-David read U.S., but the president said us. So let me give you an example, and I'm not going to obviously know the quote word for word, but the Iranian president says something like, this has happened before, what Iraq did to us. And Patrick Bet-David thought that, or read that, it was referencing like, hey, this will be the biggest war or something like that, or be a big threat or a big war, big attack. And Patrick Bet-David presented it as what Iran did to what Iraq did to the U.S. But Iran was saying, the Iranian president was saying what Iraq did to us, but he read it as the U.S., painting it in that type of light, which a lot of these outlets are doing. A lot of these propaganda artists, journalists, political influencers, whatever it is that we want to call it, they're doing a lot of this stuff. They're trying to paint a picture so we'll see the world in a certain type of way that aligns with their agenda and allows us, or maybe gives us the green light to be complicit in a lot of these evil things that are occurring. So where were we? So back to, like, when Nick gives this justification, I just don't believe it. Let me ask y'all, who do y'all think is a bigger threat? Regardless of the position of where they are, take it into consideration. Matter of fact, not regardless, considering those things. With Venezuela being on our hemisphere and them having whatever capability they have, then consider Iran with them not being on our hemisphere, with them having the capabilities that they have. Who do y'all see as a bigger threat? To me, regardless of the water, Iran is still, to me, considered a bigger threat. And then if you want to take it a step further, the ability that Iran may have to align with some of our adversaries because they're a more powerful country, that may be a bigger threat compared to Venezuela. I don't know. But I think there's just a lot of questions around this. I think that Nick is in an interesting position where he's figuring out where he wants to go, or perhaps he's made his decision on where he wants to go with all this stuff. But it's not making a lot of sense to me. I'll be honest. It's not making a lot of sense to me. I don't know how else to say it. And of course, we're all processing this as it happens, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where things are. But I mean, look at how Nick was talking about how advanced Iran is with the underground cities, and they're developing these weapons underground. Do we think they're doing that in Venezuela? Nick said it. He said we couldn't even find the Ayatollah, right? We couldn't even find the leader of Iran. But they just scooped up Venezuela's president like that with limited casualties, right? This is what Nick was saying. So with all those things being considered, I just don't get how you can see Iran not as being the bigger threat, regardless of where they are, compared to Venezuela. So I think there's just a lot of picking and choosing. I'm not going to continue to talk y'all heads off. I brought y'all down a few different tangents, but overall, Hopefully I responded to the majority of the issues that Nick was discussing on the show. I'll let y'all go. Appreciate y'all, man. Appreciate y'all. I miss y'all, man. It's good to be back. Good to be reviewing Nick's shows, and good to be able to have these conversations now after we put out the show. In the comments, I'm getting more engaged in a lot of this stuff because it's exciting. It's exciting because this is the point of all this. The point of me doing the review videos is to not put Nick on a pedestal. Maybe some people see it as that. Maybe that's one of the things, but the most important thing for me is to be able to use Nick to be able to have conversations with the masses, with you all. So people may take that some type of way, but that's, I think, one of the biggest benefits of all this. So like, subscribe, turn your notifications on. And as always, my bias may be playing a role. Y'all let me know, as y'all always do. I don't need to even tell y'all, but y'all let me know where I may be getting things wrong. Let me know where you may agree. Let me know if you could just provide a bit of clarity that I may be missing by these blind spots that are caused by my biases. But neither here nor there. Y'all let me know what y'all think, and I'll see you on the next video.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there. Let's figure out a split that's honorable and fair. Tell me where you trying to take it. Bro, I'll meet you there. 1600 Penn, Wash, D.C. Swear I saw the vision riding through the DMV. I envision prayers, but I could do VP. Hillbilly, Elegy, fuck, I look like JD. Shout out my cheat code, Dave and Karen raised me. And my big bro, a nuclear family.
And they don't like that. Strong fathers in the crib, BLM fought that. LBJ society created all that. Victimhood mentality, I can't embrace that. And everything they taught in school, assume it's all cap. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Ain't no introduction, just some fun facts. In case you were wondering, I am that.
I know you heard me hit it 3 times for Dr. Umar. Shout out to Umar, man. We ain't kicking nobody when they down. And shout out to everybody that continues to show love, support, appreciating the message that I'm giving y'all along with the bro Nick's message. We gonna keep pushing, man. And shout out to the haters too, cause y'all in the comments heavy too. y'all the ones that gave me the inspiration to create this song. They kept saying like, who's the random black guy in the corner? I am.